All right, everybody. Good afternoon. What is going on? We've got some more offensive coordinator candidates to take a look at here. And we are going to go ahead and go with a couple of guys today that I would group together in that the reasons why you would be interested in both of them are pretty similar. And that reason will become apparent as we go through these videos. But this first guy, Wes Phillips, is a guy who I would be interested in even without our specific circumstance. So, Wes Phillips is the son of the great Wade Phillips, one of the best defensive coordinators and defensive minds in NFL history, and the grandson of Bum Phillips, who was a longtime coach in the NFL as well for most memorably, I think, the Houston Oilers. So, Wes Phillips, football is in his blood. And this is the thing that's interesting about Wes Phillips. He worked with Sam Darnold in Minnesota. All right, guys, before we go any further into the video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about my friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Download the app to your phone. You can celebrate and chat about sports in real time with other users. You can get scores, news, and alerts with blazing fast speed. And you can play in daily fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports together. Download Sleeper today, and don't forget to use my promo code SBN for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Plus, they currently have a free $20 entry, no deposit required, just make an account. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper and have fun with sports this year. So obviously, the year that Sam Darnold was in Minnesota was the year he put his career back together and figured out how to be a good quarterback. So if you bring in Wes Phillips as your offensive coordinator, it is technically a lateral move from the Vikings to the Seahawks because he's still the offensive coordinator with the Vikings. But the thing to remember is that the Vikings are run by Kevin O'Connell, and Kevin O'Connell is the play caller in Minnesota. So Phillips would get to be a play caller if you brought him to Seattle. And that's why he would take it, because it is, in that sense, it's not a promotion, but it's treated like a promotion. So, yes, you could get Phillips if you really wanted to, and it would just be a matter of does he want to come? So let's look at the resume. It's actually fairly long. He's been the Vikings offensive coordinator for 4 years. To be clear, Kevin O'Connell has been the head coach that whole time. So there's no year where Phillips was the offensive play caller for them. And you can see the results have been mixed. The most recent year, the J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz year was very bad. They had one of the worst offenses in football. 2024, the offense was good. This was, of course, the Sam Darnold year. 2023, the offense was below average, bordering on bad. And then 2022, I think this was when they still had Kirk Cousins. And then 2023 also was, they had Kirk Cousins for like half the year, and then he got hurt, I think. And then 2022, they had Kirk Cousins, and they had a pretty good offense. It was maybe a little bit overrated by points per game. EPA painted a bleaker picture, but it was a offense that at the very least put up points. So Wes Phillips has had a good run as an offensive coordinator, but at some point he's going to have to get let off, kind of let off the leash so he can call plays somewhere, and maybe that place is Seattle. And again, he's worked with this quarterback before, and he's had success doing it, so there is some connection. Now, before he was the Vikings offensive coordinator, he was with the Rams under McVay and, of course, O'Connell in 2021, which was the year the Rams won the Super Bowl, tight ends coach and passing game coordinator. So two different roles. In 2021, the Rams had one of the best passing attacks in football, threw for over 4,600 yards, fifth most in the league. Dropback EPA was .183, which was fourth in the league, so great passing attack. And Tyler Higbee was a decent tight end. 61 catches, 560 yards. Not amazing, but fine. The Rams that year were obviously a little bit more about Cooper Kupp than they were any tight end. And the previous 2 years before then, he was just the tight ends coach in LA. You had 2019 and 2020. So 2020, the Rams had two good tight ends. Higbee had a pretty okay year, 520 yards. Gerald Everett had about 400 yards. We remember Gerald Everett a little bit. And 2019, the year before that, this was a year the Rams did not make the playoffs, but Higbee had over 700 yards and 70 catches as a tight end, and Gerald Everett had almost 40 catches for over 400 yards. So pretty good. I mean, they had one of the better tight end rooms in the league during that 2 year period, I would say. Higbee and Everett was a good one too. All right, so reaching before then, you again find more stops down the McVay tree, because remember, McVay was with the Washington Redskins when he started out as an offensive coordinator. He was the tight end coach there from 2014 to 2018. So he was a 5 year tight end coach. And the main guy he had during that 5 year span was Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed had some pretty good years, including one year where he almost had 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. The other years started to get injured. He got injured a lot near the end of his career, actually. There was also 1 year, or excuse me, 2 years with Vernon Davis. He still had a little bit at this point. Was actually pretty darn productive. Niles Paul this 1 year, and he also had a pretty decent 2014. So it was actually a pretty decent tight end room, right? The 2014 to 2018 Redskins, Jordan Reed was one of the better tight ends in the league at that time. He just couldn't stay healthy. And you got a little bit of late career Vernon Davis as well. It's pretty decent. I don't think I'd give him credit for Vernon Davis because Vernon Davis was a 10-year veteran by the time he went to Washington. But I mean, Jordan Reed, there's something there. There's some credibility there for sure. And you go back to 2013, he was with the Dallas Cowboys for a few years. The most recent year, 2013, he was the tight ends coach. Cowboys only really had one prolific tight end, but it was a very prolific one. Future Hall of Famer, probably Jason Witten, 850 yards that year. Now, Jason Witten had been a really good tight end for a long time before 2013. So I'm not going to sit here and act like Jason Witten was developed by um, Phillips, but it was a good season. He was also the assistant offensive line coach for 2 years before then, 2011 and 2012, under Jason Garrett. Notable offensive linemen he had during this time, it was actually pretty strong. Tyron Smith, Doug Free, Kyle Kozier. The Dallas offensive line was not great during this 2 year period, but it did develop into a pretty great one in future years on the back of guys like Tyron Smith. And then they added Zach Martin and Travis Frederick. And they ended up having a really, really awesome offensive line in 2014. But the early development was notable, especially with a guy like Tyron, who was drafted in 2011. And the 4 years before that, he was the offensive quality control coach and offensive assistant. And this was under his father because Wade Phillips was the Cowboys head coach from 2007 to 2010. And the results during this period were mostly quite good. 2010, they were seventh in points per game. 2009, they were 14th. 2018 was the 1 year that wasn't very good. This was the year Romo broke his, I think, pinky and missed games. And when he did play, he wasn't himself. They were 18th. And the 2007 offense was one of the best offenses in Cowboys history. Tony Romo, Marion Barber, Terrell Owens, Jason Witten. That was a juggernaut offense that year for sure. Even Patrick Creighton was really good that year. That was back when guys like Flozell Adams and Andre Gerard were still really good. So a good run there, I suppose. Before 2007, he was with the Baylor Bears as the quarterback coach for 1 year. They had two quarterbacks of note that year, neither of whom became anything in the NFL. Sean Bell was their main guy, 2,500 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks. okay, I guess. This was before Baylor got RG3. This was a couple years. This predated RG3 by a couple years. And before then, he was a West Texas A&M Buffaloes quarterback coach. Couldn't really find any data from back there. Okay, so that is Wes Phillips for you. That is the rundown on his resume so far. Again, I think when you look at it, this is a guy who needs an opportunity to call plays. And when you combine that with the fact that he's got familiarity with Sam Darnold and is one of the guys who can be partially credited for helping Sam Darnold realize his potential, there's a pretty good argument to be made here that Wes Phillips would be a top candidate. So let me know what you think about Wes Phillips. I'm going to go and get on out of here. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Probably going to do one more of these videos today because, like I said, I wanted to group these two guys together because they both have similar appeal.